It is Sunday, July 12, 2026. U.S. forces complete a third round of strikes against Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. The State Department marks 5 years since Cuba's July 11th uprising with a fresh call for reform. The World Health Organization warns cancer cases could nearly double by 2050. Here are the day's top stories. U.S. Central Command completed a third round of strikes against Iran on July 11th, hitting approximately 140 Iranian military targets with precision munitions launched from land and sea-based aircraft, drones, and naval vessels. Targets included missile and drone sites, naval capabilities, ammunition storage facilities, communication networks, and coastal surveillance locations. CENTCOM said the strikes held Iranian forces accountable for attacking another commercial ship in the Strait of Hormuz. This marked the third night of strikes this week, bringing the total to more than 300 targets struck at the direction of the commander-in-chief. CENTCOM says the campaign aims to degrade Iran's ability to threaten civilian mariners transiting the strait. Since early May, U.S. forces have helped facilitate the passage of more than 800 commercial vessels and 400 million barrels of crude oil through the corridor. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly a fifth of the world's daily oil supply, so continued strikes signal Washington's determination to keep the corridor open. Repeated rounds of retaliatory action also raise the risk of broader escalation with Tehran, with global energy markets watching closely. Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a statement on July 11th, marking 5 years since Cubans took to the streets demanding change. Rubio said the regime responded with brutality, beating peaceful demonstrators and arresting thousands, and that hundreds of Cubans remain unjustly detained today. He renewed the call for the immediate release of all political prisoners in Cuba. Rubio said the administration has offered Cuba aid and reconstruction assistance in exchange for political and economic reform, but that the regime continues to prioritize control over its people. He said Cuba's economy is in freefall, with citizens facing blackouts, hunger, and deprivation, while the regime hosts hostile foreign military and intelligence operations less than 100 miles from U.S. shores. The anniversary statement signals continued U.S. pressure on Havana, tying human rights demands directly to national security concerns just off Florida's coast. Washington says reform, not repression, is the only path to a better future for the Cuban people. The Federal Reserve's Open Market Committee voted 12-0 to hold the federal funds rate at a target range of 3.50 to 3.75%, according to its June 17th statement, with meeting minutes released July 8th. The committee said economic activity is expanding at a solid pace, job gains have kept up with the workforce, and productivity and capital investment remain strong. The Fed said inflation remains elevated relative to its 2% goal, partly reflecting supply shocks, including higher energy prices. It also cited elevated uncertainty, tied in part to the conflict in the Middle East. The committee reaffirmed its policy of maintaining ample reserves in the banking system and pledged to deliver price stability. The hold signals the Fed's confidence that growth remains solid even as it stays cautious on inflation and geopolitical risk. With the Middle East conflict cited directly in its statement, the Fed's next move may hinge as much on global events as on domestic data. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that total non-farm payroll employment rose by 57,000 in June, while the unemployment rate held at 4.2%. The agency said both figures changed little from May. Employment continued trending up in professional and business services, social assistance, and healthcare, while leisure and hospitality lost 61,000 jobs. Average hourly earnings rose 13 cents to $37.64, up 3.5% over the year. BLS also revised April and May job gains down by a combined 74,000. The labor force participation rate slipped 0.3 percentage point to 61.5%, and 7.1 million people remained unemployed. The next employment situation report covering July is due out August 7th. The modest job growth paired with downward revisions suggests hiring is cooling gradually rather than collapsing, giving the Fed room to hold rates steady while it watches for firmer signs of either a slowdown or renewed inflation. The World Health Organization's Global Status Report on Cancer 2026, developed with the International Agency for Research on Cancer, found cancer claims more than 26,000 lives every day worldwide. WHO reported an estimated 20.6 million new cancer cases and close to 10 million deaths annually, making cancer the second leading cause of death globally after cardiovascular disease. Without urgent action, WHO projects annual cases will climb to nearly 35 million by 2050. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said survival depends heavily on geography and income. The report found 87% of breast cancer patients survive 5 years in high-income countries compared with about 42% in low-income countries. Fewer than 1 in 3 countries include cancer care in their universal health coverage packages, and essential cancer medicines remain far out of reach for many. WHO says these inequities are not inevitable, but the result of policy choices that can be reversed through investment in prevention, early detection, and universal coverage. Left unaddressed, the widening gap in cancer survival will fall hardest on the world's poorest populations. Like and subscribe for fact-based news from official government sources only. Leave a comment. Tell us what stories you want to hear.